Today we are discussing The Chosen, Season 1, Episode 4, directed by Dallas Jenkins. This is Nathan.
This is Jason.
John.
Nick.
So we are four guys. We're from different backgrounds. Some of us are coming from a spiritual background. Some of us are coming from a non-religious background. And we thought it'd be fun to get together, watch each of these episodes, and kind of share our perspectives on them and analyze them in detail. So I wanted to share this week, we had our first YouTube comment on our last episode. Yeah. So user 2B16P says, the Shema was a learned Jewish prayer at the time. The Lord's Prayer is something Jesus taught when his disciples asked, how should we pray? So this was probably something that he taught over and over again to different people groups. He was commenting because we were discussing how Jesus had the kids recite the Shema prayer, and then later he teaches them the Lord's Prayer. So it almost seemed like he tweaked it and put his own twist on it. So then he said, I think you guys are really going to like episode 4, and the rest of the show really picks up the story after that. So awesome. It was good to hear from you. If you guys have questions or comments for us, you can contact us on Facebook, on the Church in a Brewery Facebook page. On Instagram and YouTube, we are under Brewery Ministries. You can also contact us through email on the website, breweryministries.org. So send us comments, questions. Before we get into discussing the episode, what are you guys drinking tonight?
I got some Foggy Dew from Three Rings Brewery in McPherson, Kansas. It's actually a smoky Weizenbach.
Nice.
Emphasis on the smoky.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a cute little dog on it too. I've got the.
Yeah, I see that. It's a
Gotta
cute
love
little puppy.
dogs.
Yeah. So gimmick.
Sells. What about you, John?
I know I promised beer. It's coming, but I'm with Wild Turkey 101 this evening. So
Oh, is that what you introduced me to last summer at the camping trip?
yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm,
I almost
That's
got a bourbon
burnt.
because I knew
Oh.
John was going to drink some whiskey, so I almost got a bourbon. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it.
Gonna follow the rules. Well, like a good little soldier, I finally am following the rules. Drinking beer, John. This is a German style beer. It's called an export beer or a Dortmunder for a region in Germany. It's my own home brew. Entering it into a German brewing contest. It's still young. That's why you can't really see through it. But when this is all said and done, you should be able to hold up a newspaper behind it and read through it. So soon, give it time.
Very nice.
I guess it's better than that French water you were drinking last week.
Yeah.
Crozier.
Yes. I have a beer. I'm going to meet John halfway here. I've got Dragon's Milk.
Excellent.
This one is the white stout. So it looks like this.
Oh,
I really
wow.
like the regular one. But this one is really good. And it is aged in bourbon barrels. So, like I said, meeting John halfway.
I
Half
appreciate
bourbon,
it.
half beer.
I feel like I should hold my glass up too, since you guys hold yours up. Like I did the can.
Yeah, I got to show everybody the, I don't know, the color of the beer, right? Because that tells you everything about its taste.
Yeah, and I was going to put a note on if any breweries are watching this thing would donate us some beer.
Ooh.
You know, I'm not beyond putting myself out and promoting your stuff for some free stuff.
We could review it.
Oh yeah. The pre-chosen review with the beer review, or the post-chosen review with the beer review.
Dude, that'd be amazing. Hey, yeah, me and Heath and I, we reviewed some beers. We did some taste testing on the Facebook page, so that could be fun. Okay, so this week I actually pulled a plot summary from IMDb instead of Pathos. I just wanted to mix it up. So, all right, the plot summary for episode 4. In this emotional episode, some fishermen who can't pay the heavy Roman taxes are at the end of their ropes. Business is abysmal. An attempted deal with officials has gone badly, and they know that prison is imminent. They need a miracle, and then they encounter an itinerant teacher. He tells them he will redefine their careers. They will catch no more fish, but men. Now, right at the top here, I noticed the episode is called The Rock on Which It Is Built. And I thought this was interesting because there's a big debate over what the rock is. And since this episode centers around Simon, who's later going to be known as Peter, I didn't know if it was just coincidence or if they were, taking a stand on saying that Peter is the rock. Because I know some denominations think that, but I also know the directors made a blanket statement saying this isn't intended to push any one doctrine, like it's supposed to be for everyone. So I thought that was interesting that title that's a loaded title, right? Anybody else notice that?
Yeah. I actually noticed with this series, I was thinking about it is, that early Christians used to use that, was it the Ithaca, the fish symbol, and we still see that today on people's cars as meaning Christianity. And so for some reason I kept kind of passing through my mind when I watched this particular show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask a quick dumb question. Why do they change their names? Why does Simon become Peter? What's the thought process there? Because I was watching through this with my wife. She's like, "Oh yeah, that's Peter." I was like, "No, his name's Simon." And I think there's two other instances where someone is referenced currently, and they end up having a different name. I forgot who it is, but regardless, my wife picked up on him. I did not. So that's just making this all the more confusing.
I think this is just kind of like a guess because I've heard this before, but without taking time to look it up. I think it partly represents sort of a rebirth, but usually names meant something. So if they were going to take on a new name, whatever that name they chose, it usually meant something that was supposed to be symbolic. Jason, you probably know some background on this, don't you?
I don't. I really don't. Honestly, don't. I mean,
Nope.
Peter is supposed to be. Isn't he responsible for being the founder of Catholicism? Is that correct? If you look at the popes, actually, they change their name too when they become popes.
Right.
Interesting.
Which makes it equally as confusing.
Yeah, because the debate, let's see, I wrote down all the things I could think of that the rock means in scripture. So some people think it means Peter. Peter's the rock the church is built on. Some people think the rock is Jesus. Some people think Jesus was actually talking about the location he was standing on, because he was actually standing in an area known as the gates of hell, where people sacrificed to Zeus and all these other gods. So some people think it means he's going to go to the gates of hell and build his church like on top of it and bury it. So there's all these different possible meanings. It could be more than one. It's interesting. Let's see. You guys want to dive into the first scene?
Yep.
All right, so the show opens with Peter, and he's with the Roman soldiers. And he finds a fishing bobber, and it's got a Z marked on it, which stands for Zebedee. So as it turns out, Peter is about to accidentally turn in his friends. So he doesn't want to do that. So he ends up directing them to crash this boat onto a sandbar. And as a result, the Romans decide they're going to cut Simon's ear as retaliation. They call this kindness because they say Quintus would probably kill you. So what did you think about this scene?
I thought it was interesting, just to jump in, first of all, on just how well you would have to know an area to navigate it at night like that and be able to know spot on where the sandbar's at. And I mean, it goes to speak, and I think it makes it realistic in terms of how often he's going out there at night and trying to make a living. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
I think it also kind of, it's interesting when he's like sitting in a boat looking. I mean, he's good enough friends with these people. He has a big idea of actually where they're at, where he's going towards the sandbar instead of the other direction. I mean, he could have very well been fishing over that way. So I mean, it's kind of, it shows a little bit of how much he knows these guys and what it would have meant if he, turned them in.
Yeah.
But if he knew the area well enough and like he knew those were his friends, why is he taking them that way? I mean, I guess because he has a sudden change of heart. I mean, John mentions, okay, it's impressive that he knows the area. And then, Jason said it's his friends, and it's his friends are there. Well,
but he doesn't know it's his friends until he finds the Bob.
Yeah, I agree.
At the tavern, they say something like, I think the oldest Zebedee, the father, he says something like, well, you don't know where I'm going to be next. So I sort of got the sense that they move around. So I think Simon maybe knew the good fishing spots, but he didn't know who was going to be there on that particular night.
Yeah, it's the deal he made. I understand that. It's still crabby.
Yeah.
Fishy.
Isn't that kind of how it goes, though?
Yeah. And then to get your ear cut, I didn't see, how bad was the ear cut? Are we talking like he can't have his ears pierced anymore, or like is it halfway hanging off? Like
half an inch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like Roman gauges.
Yeah. Yeah. Early trendsetter.
Way early. So then we head to the tavern or the pub, whatever it is. So Simon tried to make a deal with the Zebedee brothers, asked them to turn their catch in. Now, I was trying to figure out, I assume he was going to turn it over to the Romans to get the Romans off the fisherman's back, right?
Right.
Part of me wondered if he was just going to turn it in himself to get him out of the doghouse. But I don't know. It's maybe a little unclear there.
I wasn't sure either. Was he going to turn it in to get, like you said, the Romans off, or is he going to take that fish to market and get enough money to pay off his debt? I mean, I didn't know what he was going to.
See, I thought it was. Oh, good.
I was just going to say, yeah, I felt like it was more geared towards the Romans, to turn it in directly to them, because even if he pays off his debt, there's still an expectation from a deal that he made with Quintus that he has to fulfill, because once he entered that agreement, I don't see Quintus just kind of stepping back and being like, "Oh, you paid the money, we're good to go, no problem, friend." So I don't know. That was the impression I had from it.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be like, instead of hey, here are my friends who are fishing illegally, here's their haul.
Right.
So you know what? Please just take the money away from them. Don't hurt them, but just here's the money. You cool with that?
Yeah, I was assuming that because there's one dropped line about maybe buying them time with the Romans. So that was my impression.
Yeah.
But they turned him down, so
they praise him for being, one of them is the oldest one who's like, well, I appreciate you being honest, but what did you expect? Or what, he says something like that. Yeah.
And they're rebels because the Romans are after all of them, right? You'd think they'd want to buy a little time.
Right.
Well, didn't he make a comment about you're taking the food out of the mouths of my men at this point? And I think everyone, in that area, it seems like fishing's hard and they're all fairly desperate in a lot of ways. So I could see that where it's like, your problems aren't necessarily my problems. It doesn't mean that we're not friends, but I've got my own situation to deal with, and you just brought me into a bigger one.
Yeah, it's my understanding that they were historically like the bottom of the economic totem pole, along with shepherds and I guess anybody who raises livestock.
You're saying fishermen or the Jews?
Fishermen.
Or both?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Jews were certainly subject to the Romans at this point, but I mean,
Okay.
aside from that, like within the Jewish system, I think fishermen were towards the bottom.
Okay.
At least that's what I've been told.
Well, I think John kind of hit a point there. I mean, I don't think there was one boat out there. I think those builders had multiple boats out there, and I think you make a reference to like 40 people out there or something. So I don't know how many boats they got, but yeah, you can't just like take the fish when there's people that are, I guess he owns his boats, but poorer than him, just workers that are. That's how they're living. You can't just say starve. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is this the Mediterranean Sea they're fishing in? What
Hmm.
or the Black Sea or?
Want to be the Black Sea?
Okay,
I
There
think
is-
so, yeah.
there's an absurd amount of fish in that body of water. I'm sure. Like, I don't know. I know the Romans are just kind of proving a point, but I don't know. It's disappointing.
They want money. They got people cheating the system.
Yeah, with
I mean, it could
fish.
be about authority at that point.
I mean, it 100% is. You're right.
Mhm.
Just trying to exercise their dominion, or however you describe it.
Well, you got to look at those boats they're using too. I mean, they're not getting 20, 30 miles outside of shore. I mean, they're a couple miles out. I mean, they're not, way out there. Those boats ain't that big. Yeah, and actually, it is the Mediterranean. I was going to answer about that.
Oh, okay. I
Because
don't know.
my dad always told me they call it fishing for a reason and not catching. So
Well, speaking of authority, the next scene, we get to see a little debate again between Matthew and Quintus. So I personally think Quintus is awesome. I think his character is really interesting. My girlfriend was watching this with me, and she thinks he's annoying.
Was
So
that Quintus? Or I thought he used a different name this time.
Dominus is like a
Dom-
title.
Okay, Dominus.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, she's not as high on him as I am, because I think he's interesting. But his little monologue at the beginning is awesome, because he says he doesn't like the people. He says, "You're such a miserable lot. You worship one God, yet you're all divided." Which I thought, wow, that's another statement that is very relevant today.
Mhm.
The next
He
thing
also
he
talks
says,
about how great their fruit and all that stuff is there. Pretty much everything's
Yeah.
amazing.
great vacation spot, terrible people.
Yeah.
Great food, great beaches, great weather, terrible people.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't think of the Jews as being so divided until I really look into it. I figured out, okay, so the Jews, I don't think their beliefs are quite as uniform. Like there's different subsets, as I realized. So that statement was interesting. He
Is that
says,
I just got to
Nick.
explain that a little bit, because I don't understand how they were broken up.
Well,
Maybe not specifically, but just generally. I don't know.
I knew
They're not actually subscribing all to, and we look at them now, we'll look at this segment here. They're not all subscribing to the Pharisees. I mean, there's other different religions kind of in play there as well. And so, I mean, like you were talking about, some of them still sacrifice the other gods. Some just don't agree with it. There's a social class order there as well. So there's a bunch of different things kind of happening. I mean, it's not, sometimes people think all the Jews are just one religion. At this time, they were not. Multiple religions kind of at play at the same time. Just they had problems before the Romans even showed up. So that was kind of
Okay.
And even
So-
in this episode, they reference Pharisees and Sadducees as two separate sects. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well, where it does, there, like you said, there's definitely multiple sects of the same faith that have slightly different observation practices. So
not unlike Christianity today.
Nope.
Okay. Sorry. You keep going.
Oh, that's okay. My understanding of the Pharisees was they're the more conservative group, and then the
Okay.
Sadducees were much less conservative, or whatever that would mean at the time. But if you're going to try to modernize it, and the Sadducees didn't believe that there was going to be like a future resurrection, like a Messiah figure that came back, but the Pharisees did. And then there's other groups too. I just can't remember some of the other names off the top of my head. So yeah, there's all these different splinters, which is interesting.
And was there like, was it Zora or something? With some other like,
Zoroastrian?
weren't they like in that time frame? There's a bunch of other.
Man, I don't know much about them.
There was
They
a
were
couple
masks.
other.
Yeah, Zoro. Or I was thinking of Zelda, like what's the water creatures?
Zoras.
Oh,
Zora's
Zoras, yes. It's a good podcast. We reference Zoras.
What else is-
But they don't trust each other in society. I mean, a couple of episodes we kind of looked at that. Even the ones here that we see in the story, they don't really. They have issues with each other. They don't like each other anymore. I mean,
Right.
Well, that's going to come up again with the scene with Nicodemus, because like they go to arrest John the Baptist and they do it in secret and they bend their own rules to do it.
Right.
So I thought that's interesting because you're seeing the division among the religious people already in the show. So the whole Quintus Matthew conversation, what do you think of this?
Well, not to get too far ahead on this, but one of the comments that kind of stuck out or stood out to me was when Quintus told Matthew, "Of course you have a dog."
Yeah.
I kind of laughed at that harder than I probably should have, but I agree with you. I find Quintus kind of an enjoyable character in how he's portrayed. He's very intelligent, and he kind of has a sarcastic side to him in a lot of ways. But you can tell how quick his mind thinks and how he's moving along. And in this scene in particular, he keeps telling Matthew, catch up, keep up, like we're moving on. So
yeah, because he's very literal, and Quintus is like, draw the connection,
yeah.
I think Quintus kind of knows how. I agree with John. I think Quintus is an interesting character. I mean, first he asked, Matthew, where's your, what was it, your escort? He's like, he didn't come in because I was going to kill you. He didn't want any of that. And so he just kind of, I think he's somewhat bored maybe, and he looks at Matthew as entertaining. And just like you said, he keeps correcting Matthew. I think he does see value in him because he said, he keeps referencing his machine. So he knows how Matthew's brain works. And so, like he says, keep up. He's kind of almost like, I know how your brain works. I got to guide you the right direction. And so I think Quintus's mind it's just something different than what he sees anywhere there. And so then it's entertainment, I guess.
Dude, for me, it's Matthew.
Then he doesn't understand things though, because when he says spy on Simon, and he goes, I can't. He goes, why not? He goes, because they hate me. Quintus is like, what? Okay, well, good guys. And so Quintus, in a way, doesn't understand the social dynamics maybe a little bit when it comes to some of that.
Yeah, that is interesting. Wouldn't you think, is that monologue about, they reject me, they hate me, tax collectors are more hated than the Romans, is that maybe there for the audience to understand? Because Quintus should know that stuff, shouldn't he?
I would think so.
Unless he just has no contact with the people.
Well, and I think he is somewhat removed. And even if he's not, it doesn't really seem like it would be practical for it to be a concern of his. It's not, as long as the money's coming in, why would he care? He's got bigger issues. He's running this division of a Roman army, to where I would think that he would somewhat be removed, just like a chain of command would be from what's going on with field staff.
I tend to agree. I would say Matthew's escort probably knows, because he's there day to day on the streets when Quintus is not. So I mean, like John said, he's got stuff to do. He's running a whole battalion in that area, whatever he's doing.
I guess that makes sense, because if you think about it, all of these social circles are pretty far removed from each other. Like the religious leaders are over here and they've got their own culture and they've got a different way of doing things. And then the Romans, I mean, they obviously do things quite a bit different than the Jews. So you've got these three circles and they're kind of far apart on things from each other. So maybe he really doesn't know how things work down on the street level.
Yeah.
I love that whole question. Is your booth protected? And Matthew's like, my dog guards it. I just laughed like, that's ridiculous, man. If somebody wanted to get in your booth, I'm pretty sure they could take your dog out, but like he thinks it's protected.
I was starting to say earlier, Matthew is my favorite character. I love how literal he is. There's no guessing, and he calls it how he sees it. You know, he says, like you said, my dog protects it. Of course you have a dog. He's like, we should shadow him. They don't like me. Well, get a disguise. Oh yeah, okay. Like it's you can hear the gears grinding in his head, right? It's I don't know. I just that to me he is entertaining. He is the Rain Man. Like from remember the movie Rain Man? He's like
Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, he's like, 3 p.m. Gotta watch Wapner. Like Matthew is that type of person. Like, 3 p.m. I gotta get back to my booth. My dog's gonna be angry. Like that's how I see he is. And I love it.
I think you brought something up. I think you said you first seen Matthew character. I think Nick, you said it looks like he might have Asperger's or something like that.
Yeah.
And the more and more that we watch him, I'm bored with you now when he says that, because of the way he just has this black and white interpretation of everything. This is how it's done. This is how it's not done. You know, this ain't going to work. Like at the end when he catches all the fish, he's like, how does this work? This is impossible. And so it's kind of hard for them. So almost reinforces kind of your idea of he has Asperger's or something, just kind of how they think, you know,
Yeah, and
real literal interpretation of stuff.
And not to get too ahead, but at the end they're like, how is this possible? And he's like, it's impossible. It's like, all right, you didn't have to say it out loud. Thanks. We got it.
Yeah.
Well, did Quintus say that to, say, of course you have a dog to Matthew? Because it's like, of course that would be your only friend. Is that like that kind of statement? And did Matthew find that dog in episode 2? Like, when we see the dog show up, is that when he first meets the dog, or like did he already know this dog?
He feeds him on the street. Yeah, he feeds him on the street. Couldn't it also be that Quintus kind of looks at Matthew as kind of boyish, like more like a boy, like a child a little bit? He's real smart, but he's like a child. He's not.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So when he says, "Of course you have a dog," that's something that a child would do, probably.
He's like a genius where the social part of his brain is stunted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the dog statement though as we could see it as, of course you have a dog, like of course you're a boy with a dog, or of course. So I can see the Romans looking at the Jews as like their pets, right? So of course the pet has a pet, like type of thing. So I don't know.
It's good stuff.
Regardless, it was entertaining. So
So the next scene, let's see. The next scene is the Pharisees. So we've got, how do I say this name? I keep forgetting. Shmuel? What's that guy's name?
Shmuel.
All right, so yeah, they're debating Schmiegel. They're debating this encounter they have with John the Baptist. Yeah, one ring to rule them all. All right, so they're having a problem with John the Baptist. They're ticked off because John the Baptist called them snakes. At first, I couldn't figure out, are they talking about some encounter with Jesus? Because it sounds kind of like Mark chapter 2, where they're ticked off because Jesus is talking about forgiving people's sins. But as it turns out, it's John the Baptist that they're talking about. The thing that I thought was really telling is when he's talking about like this baptism that John's preaching about and forgiveness, but then when he says, and they called us snakes, and Nicodemus questions them in Shmuel or whatever, he says, what could be worse than that? Like the worst part of all of those things to him is that they called the religious leaders snakes. So I thought that was pretty telling. What did you guys take from this debate?
It's just funny, interesting that they actually were saying, I'm not sure why that got stuck in my mind. They kept saying John the Baptizer instead of John the Baptist. I'm like, why do they keep saying baptizer? And so I was like, because most of us know John the Baptist. I was like, all right, that's
So-
never real.
Well,
I
so,
guess-
so
Go ahead.
no, sorry. Well, so what I was going to say was, like you said, Nathan, when they first start talking, you're not sure if it's Jesus or John the Baptist they're talking about, right? And for me, we had to have I have to have the subtitles on. I've got a cold, so like I've got to have them on anyway, or to hear. And as the subtitles are going on, he isn't capitalized. And so I'm listening to him talk back and forth, and I'm like, he, and I was like, well, either the captions are messed up or they're talking about someone else. And then they reference John the Baptist. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, the
I
captions still work.
noticed. Yeah, I noticed the exact same thing because they're very, very deliberate when they use he and him and capitalizing those letters.
Yeah.
But I questioned it as well. Like, who are we talking about here? I do think I like Nicodemus as a character. He's
I do
grown
too.
on me. I didn't start off liking him. I thought his acting was terrible. He has grown on me. But yeah, his reaction to this whole situation, like you said, in terms of it seems like his focus is on he called me a name. I have this air of regalness about me. But with that being taken into consideration, he still wants to go talk to him. Like he's still curious and inquisitive about the situation beyond just, and maybe that's the driving force behind it. I don't know. But I like the fact that he has this inquisitive nature about him where it's like, I need to know more. I need facts. I need to figure this out and dig into it deeper than just, we have this conversation or I'm getting secondhand information.
Mhm.
Could this be
It doesn't
related
seem like
to
Nicodemus is really
sorry.
that offended by the snake comment because he
Yeah.
says, "Is it not offensive?" He's like, "Well, it depends on who says it." But he's kind of focused on he wants to meet this John the Baptist guy. You can kind of tell he's got some interest there.
I feel like his interest is still coming back from was it episode 2 where he thinks he's healed Lilith or Mary, and
Yeah.
we find him and he's studying and he's looking through all the texts and reading up on exorcisms and trying to figure out why his didn't work and all that. I wonder if like his curiosity still stems from all of that. Like, oh man, why did it work? Why didn't it work? And now he hears John the Baptist talk about all these things. He's like, okay, I got to keep digging in.
That's what I thought, because like they know from the Jewish writings that they have at that time to expect a Messiah figure at some point. So I wonder if he thinks whoever did this healing of Mary might be the Messiah. So if he says, if they called us snakes, or if he called us snakes, depends on who called us that. Like, what if it is the Messiah figure? What if he's right? I mean, he's questioning the religious system enough at this point that I think he might be open to some things are wrong or out of priority within the tradition.
Kind of reinforces that too when you look at his wife says, you can do your research in Jerusalem, can't you? And he's like, no, we're staying here. And that's the end of the story. Well, this tells her we're not leaving. And if you look at the end, he asked, John Baptizer, tell me about miracles. So you can kind of see his
creepy John.
Yeah. Not this one.
Yeah, not you, John.
You guys keep the same nickname. It's just coincidence. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Well, it stuck out to me too that they said, oh, so he's preaching a populist message. They said that as a result of like, oh, can you believe he's telling the tax collectors to not take more than they're supposed to? And he's telling people to give clothes and food to the poor, like as if this is a terrible thing. So you can tell something is wrong.
The horror.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a quick question. So the Jewish religion believes that the Messiah has not come yet. So like modern day Judaism doesn't believe Jesus was the Messiah, right?
Right.
Okay. So
I should put a caveat in there that, so I learned from our brewery church, there's a guy there He's a rabbi. He believes there are 7 Messiah figures, but they're not the Messiah. So he equates Jesus to like Moses, who he believes was also a Messiah figure. But I think he puts Jesus probably greater than the others, but not the Messiah. So I think he's still waiting for an ultimate Messiah or something. Like it is a little confusing.
I kind of go against him on that there, because from my understanding, you're talking to other Jewish people, they will put Jesus as the wise man, which is kind of a new thing. Before they never said that until probably like 80s or so, 70s. They just kind of we're still waiting for the Messiah. I mean, they're just back the whole idea of Jesus. And so I think that on our day, they're almost like Islam. Islam still, they believe in the Messiah as well. They're still kind of also.
Well, the reason I asked the question was, in these Pharisees are talking to Nicodemus, and they're talking about, the Messiah, and he's mentioning these things, and it's like, okay, if there are religions that believe the Messiah hasn't come yet, is it just a different time? Because like I don't hear my Jewish friends talking about, I can't think of Elon Musk, is he the next Messiah? Or I not to get topical, I really just thought of the first name that came to my mind. But like I don't hear people always like, man, is that the Messiah? Is that the next one? Is that him? Is he here? And maybe I'm just not in the right circles. But back in this time, in the time frame of this the gospel here, we've got the blind guy who grabs what seems to be every person that walks by him and asks if that person's the Messiah, right? Even though we've actually seen he did skip a couple, which makes me question if those people smell bad or something. But I just feel like it's a very topical, trendy thing that they're always talking about. It's like, oh, is the sky blue? Oh, what are we having for dinner? Oh, did you see the Messiah today? No. Like, I don't know. It just seems, I don't know.
And also, if you look at some of the history books, particularly Roman history, Jesus wasn't the first person they crucified claiming to be the Messiah. I mean, there was quite a few. So it was
I did not know that.
Judas the Hammer. He
nice
was
nickname.
Well, he wasn't crucified, but he was killed after rebellion. So this is maybe this partially answers that question. I don't know that I totally know. If you've got Jewish friends, I would be interested if you'd ask them just to know. But I know that there's like 350 prophecies in the Old Testament that say what the Messiah is going to be like, right? Well, the rabbi that we know, he doesn't think that Jesus met all of the qualifications. I think he fit them all, but he thinks Jesus sinned and things like that. Now, here's the other thing. I don't totally know if he is waiting for a future Messiah, though. And I should ask him. He thinks that Jesus was given authority in this universe by God to forgive sins. So he's still the mediator between humans and God, but not the Messiah. So that's the reason I said I'm a little unclear on what he believes, and I can't figure out, is he a typical Jew? Is he in a subset of Jews? I can't totally figure it out yet. But I tell you this just so that you know, I don't know that all Jews exactly believe the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, if you know people, ask them, and maybe on the next episode we can kind of have a better idea.
Those Jewish people out there, please answer it. Put it in the comments.
Yeah. I was going to say, in today's world of of ridiculous things we see on social media, let's throw these as our Facebook status and ask these questions. It'd be a nice little change up, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I legitimately want to know. So
yeah, I
mean, who's got an actual someone who's actually practicing the Jewish faith. I mean, a lot of times I think Christians will interject thinking they know, but
yeah, that's a good point.
It's better to hear from the source, because I've heard some pastors preach about other groups and what they believe, but I know people in those groups, and I think that's not what they would say. So it's always
All right.
better to go to the source.
So we need the real Slim Shady to stand up.
Yeah. So next we've got the Simon comes home scene. So his wife seems pretty ticked off. What did you guys make of the debate? I mean, she pretty much chews him out here.
It seemed very real to me.
Is that something you're going through?
I'm not going to say too much on that. Yeah, I'm just going to say that it seemed like a realistic conversation that would happen. So,
Everyone's getting unsettled. I see it.
I think that's interesting when you look at just that. If you look at some of the other podcasts I've looked at just on our YouTube series, and there's always that question: is does this give too much of a role to women? So this here kind of, I mean, she just tears him up and down. Granted, it is her brothers and stuff there, but I do like it when he makes the comment of, "I'm not talking to your sister. I'm talking to my wife. Leave," kind of, so he can put down. But I don't know why I find that interesting. I mean, in that society, any of those those old school societies, that's not that. We talked about that before. It's not that women ain't back talking or cleaning it up. It's just sort of that aggressive. They do it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably the first one where I agree with you, Jason, where I didn't feel like in the time period it really fit, especially since there were others in the room. Her two brothers being there, it didn't seem appropriate for her to be talking to her husband for the time period. Yeah, for the time period. Again, I've had those conversations, and it's times where it's just like, okay. And there's other times where it's like, all right, we're going to hash this out. But it seemed off, but also very realistic for modern day, I guess.
Yeah, I agreed. And I don't. Anybody watching this, I mean, we're all for women's rights and stuff, but just in historical context, I mean, women were not equal citizens at this time frame. Look at that. I mean, it's not just Jewish populations, pretty much any society you see at that time frame. Kind of the negative aspects of, I guess, what women had to endure through history.
Things just weren't public. I mean, you kept private life fairly private as well, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen. But
I mean, that was family. I mean, it was his brother-in-laws and his mom and his wife. I mean, they were in the home. So I get what you're saying, kind of, right?
I hadn't thought about it that way.
And then he kicks him out and says, "Hey, this is my home. Get the hell out. We're going to talk about this." I've been there before.
What did you think about what she says? Do you think she's right? Because so she basically tells him that he's in the situation that he's in because he's not pursuing God. So that's a little bit of a sensitive, I guess. Like, I was uncomfortable with the scene the first time because it sounds like prosperity gospel again, but I don't think that's what the show means, because she is right if you think about the context from the other episodes. Like, he's gambled away their money, he's lied to his wife, he's lied to everybody, and he was in a hole maybe, but now he's in a much deeper hole, and now his life's in danger, and he's put her life in danger. They might lose the house. So yeah, if he'd been following his religion, to a T, he wouldn't have done any of those things. I would have liked maybe a statement of clarification saying, not just like, you're in the situation because you haven't been following God. Like, maybe say something about the gambling and the other things there, because otherwise it does kind of sound like, one of those things like, if you just follow God, your business would be successful. And like,
just for the tithe, your 10%.
Yeah, and we know that's not true because, like, you've got jerk NFL players. I mean, I like NFL, but you've seen ones who were like beating women off field and stuff, and they have millions of dollars. So there's also that woman in scripture who has no money. She has like 2 coins and she gives them to the temple. And Jesus obviously thinks highly of her, but she doesn't have any money. Like, things aren't going real well for her. So I don't think prosperity gospel works, but this scene came off like it at first, like that's what they were saying. And I didn't know if, well, maybe she does think that way. Like, maybe the show's not making a statement on correct theology right here. Maybe it's showing everybody's broken theology. I don't know. What do you think? Because that was a common type of thinking in the day.
Do you think, just there's also questions out there? I mean, the way I look at it, there's two ways to kind of look at that scene. Is just kind of like you said with the prosperity gospel. You're broken, all these bad things happen to you because you don't believe in God. So he's punishing you in some way. Or is it you have problems because you're not following the principles of the religion?
That's what I think they meant. I think my experience and my encounters with prosperity gospel colored probably my view of the scene, because you take the context of his situation for 4 episodes and you get what you just said. That's probably the accurate way I was meant to take that scene. Did anybody else like feel hints of what I felt, or did you guys see it the way it is?
So it instantly rubbed me the wrong way.
Okay, so I'm not alone.
Yeah, it instantly hit on one of the things that I struggle with religion, where it's, you're going through hard times, just put your faith in God. Or, I guess that's the black and white of it. For me, it's, I'm going through a hard time. I'm going to figure my stuff out. I'm going to own it. I'm a man, or I'm bad way to say that. I'm responsible. I'm going to stand up and take care of my issues. I'm not going to go to church and do my 10% tithing and bury my head in the Bible and pray that God's going to help me. Right? That's not how I operate. Now, I've read, and some of the teachings I've had on the religious side are that if you pray for patience, God's not going to give you patience, right? He's going to put you in a situation to learn how to use patience and get you that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you pray for a new car, you may not get a new car. You may get a really good job opportunity type of thing. Again, I struggle with that, but that makes more sense to me than like, well, man, you're going to get killed by the Romans because you didn't pray to God. Well, no, you're going to get killed by the Romans because you gambled away your money and you lied and went in a deal with these guys and whatever. So to try and shame me or slam me and say bad things are happening to me because I didn't get up at 7:30 on Sunday and go to church, that's BS. I don't like that one bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I don't think that's what they were trying to say here, but it needed clarification. So like we knew how to translate what they were portraying.
Yeah, I agree with Jason that it's not how I perceived it when I initially watched it. And in terms of prosperity gospel, I mean, whole book of Job was one of the most godly people in the Old Testament. And look at all the terrible, horrific things that guy had to go through, and never lost his faith. So I don't know. I didn't take it that way at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's interesting you mentioned Job, because I think sometimes the prosperity gospel comes from Job. The way a lot of Christians look at it is Job didn't lose his faith, and look what happened. He got rewarded tenfold. And so God took care of him because he didn't lose his faith. I think they kind of missed the message on Job.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens from point A to point B there. So,
but he got to point B.
Well, I could counter that by saying Moses followed God and he didn't get to go into the promised land. And he also prayed, "Dear God, please kill me because I can't stand leading these people." But I'll counter my concerns with something that the show does later. Jesus intervenes with Simon while Simon hasn't really changed anything. Like, he's still in a bad place. So when I thought about that, I'm like, okay, that confirms what they meant in that debate scene. It's either maybe Eden has bad theology and they're just showing different theologies of the day, or she didn't mean it like that and she meant like, look, you obviously aren't taking your own teaching seriously because you dug this hole. So yeah. Well, then he goes outside and Andrew rushes in saying that they've met the Messiah. So tell me what your thoughts and reactions were on this scene.
Again, back to my original statement. Maybe this is just common. Maybe like on a typical Sunday when you wake up in this area, this time, place, and this land, you walk outside and here comes John walking up. Dude, I met the Messiah. Okay, who is it this time? Like, maybe it's, I don't think that's the case, but I don't know. Just a testament to like, maybe that's the the times. Everyone's so hungry for the Messiah. And he's just like, all right, dude.
He's definitely jaded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course.
Well, and I don't know. I thought this was a fairly realistic scene where if you put yourself in Simon's shoes, everything that he's gone through in this 24-hour period, like he just had part of his ear chopped off. Like, I mean, he comes home, like, you know, he's got issues at home with his wife. He still has chores to do. He's not going to go to bed. He's been up all night working. And it's like the guy's exhausted. He's stressed out. He's in financial debt, financial trouble. I think that's very relatable to what some people are going through right now. And, you know, your brother, one of your best friends comes up to you and they're like, I got this great news. And it's just like, I can't deal with this right now. I need a moment. My wife just chewed me out. Like I'm feeding the animals right now. Just, we're good. Come back later. So I just felt like it was very relatable to how it was presented to modern times.
Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, so going along with that, when Matthew, the worst spy of all time, shows up, like obviously he's so socially disconnected that he doesn't know how to be inconspicuous or hide. He says, you know, turn yourself in. It's not mathematically possible. Again, like, is it so much about the math, or is it presenting the idea that like we think we know the odds, but we don't, or we think we know how things are going to go, and we don't? Because I don't believe in blind faith necessarily. So I don't know what they're trying to say here, but is it so much about actual mathematic odds, or is it about perception of the odds? Because like we're human, we never really know how much hope is left in a situation. We're just guessing. And sometimes there's like, if you get depressed, there's a lot more hope out there. We just can't see it, right? You think there's no hope when there's actually hope, things like that.
I think Simon's character and the way he's been presented since the start of this has been one that is always up against the odds. Like he's been backed into tight corners before. He's come out okay, maybe not like completely okay, but he goes on another day. So I could see where it's like he's got that mentality instilled in him where it's like, okay, if I just work really hard right now and focus, this is going to be fine. I'm going to figure it out. I have no other option. And he doesn't see that turning himself in as an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to try. Even if you know that, like, well, actually, there's no knowing. At that point, there is no other option because you have to try. Like, okay, I turn myself in, I die. Well, that's not happening. You know, I die. My wife loses the home. My wife most likely gets killed. Or I just put my head down and go. Like, just gotta try. So I see that, but obviously Matthew means it literally because that's how he is, right? Like,
well, yeah, one of them is arguing for the odds. He's saying play the odds. The other is trying to defy the odds. They both end up being wrong. So I was thinking about what that might mean symbolically.
I think when you look at the Matthew character, I think it's kind of they're kind of ended up towards the end where, you know, Jesus gives Simon all those fish, Because you look at Matthew, the whole time he's more analytical. Anytime something else happens, he goes, oh, that's another variable. And so he's got all these calculations and stuff kind of happening. So sometimes you talk about Jesus' religion, things don't work out the way you saw your calculations. And I think they're trying to lead us into that. Because when you get to the end, when all the fish, people they say, this is impossible, this can't happen. And so it kind of goes, he has a hard time explaining it because sometimes you just can't explain these things. And so I think that's what they're trying to lead us in that route with that Matthew character. Because you look in this episode, I think they show a lot of him doing calculations, doing analytical stuff, a lot more than. And so then when you get to the end, it's like, oh, this ain't possible.
Maybe this is connected to last episode we were talking about, like Jesus is talking to the kids. Why do they seem to get it faster than, he says his disciples are not going to get what he's saying as fast. Maybe this is connected to like, we do what we know, we kind of get stuck in a rut and can't see outside of it. I don't know if it's connected to that bias or not.
Don't you guys also find with this one here, it's kind of interesting that Judas Simon, he doesn't believe in this Messiah. I mean, religious people today are expected to go based on faith. And here, these guys don't believe until, oh crap, how this happened? All these fish or these miracles. And so now all of a sudden they're believers. I'm thinking, okay, I mean, you want us to take it on faith, but here they're actually, performing miracles to kind of convince people.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, along that path line, though, leading back to the previous episode with the kids, there was an assumption there that was presented where Jesus was going to be this warrior that comes in and, brings the Jewish people out from under the clutches of these Romans, in more of a warrior-like mentality that seemed to be communicated and being taught, versus what Jesus comes in and actually, presents.
Yeah, and I don't want to spoil too much of what I think is coming up in, actually, they skipped over it. So I guess I can go ahead and talk about it. So John the Baptist, since he's already in prison, so I was just reading this earlier today. In Matthew chapter, I forget which chapter, it's early, where Jesus gets baptized by John the Baptist, or John the Baptizer. But then at that time, like John believes Jesus is the Messiah, and it says he heard a voice from heaven saying, "This is my son whom I dearly love." Well, if you fast forward to Matthew chapter 11, John the Baptist is in prison, and he sends a messenger to Jesus to ask, "Are you the Messiah, or should we wait for someone else?" So it's like one moment he saw something miraculous, he believes this guy's the Messiah, but just because he saw that doesn't mean he's not going to have doubts later. And I think we're just prone to question ourselves. I mean, there's situations I can think of where I've seen something happen, and then later I question if that actually happened. And I'm like, dude, you're not crazy. You know what you saw. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they're kind of going through something like that. If you're really stressed, I think it can cause you to question things that you think you saw or things you think you know.
Yeah.
How about what did you think about John the Baptist's secret arrest? This stuck out to me because, I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but they're going to do the same thing to Jesus later. Like his trial took place at night in secret.
Doesn't John get out of that in that instance there? Because I remember, right, doesn't King Herod or somebody getting him when he gets his head cut off as a wedding present from his
You mean, does he get
girl?
out and then
Yeah, in
get
this
put back
instance, he
in?
gets out, does he not? I mean, not to the point where he gets his head cut off yet, or I mean,
I think he does. I hope I didn't spoil anything.
I thought his head was a wedding gift. And
Yeah.
so,
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think it was the Pharisees that got him. I thought it was King
They had
Herod or
him.
somebody else that got him there.
They had him arrested by the Romans, so he's in Roman custody, but it's like the Jews turned him in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I didn't think the Romans were the ones that actually killed him. I thought it was king that killed him.
Herod or somebody?
Yeah, King Herod. It was a wedding gift for. And so I was thinking he gets out of this somehow, but then he gets picked back up again, I think, or something.
So who's the head of Rome? I mean, we got Quintus as a governor.
Pontius
Oh,
Pilate.
Pilate.
Pontius Pilate is going to be the head. He's in Jerusalem though.
Or is he governor, or is like who's king? Do they have a king?
So they had Pontius
What's-
Pilate is the regional governor of the whole what they call the Levant, which is that whole area there. But he's actually stationed in Jerusalem where he's at.
But there's people over him.
You're talking about the Caesars?
The emperor's over
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
in Rome.
Huh. Okay, I'm
Yep.
gonna have to dig on. I feel like I should know this, but I'm gonna have to look up who Herod is. I mean, I know he was king, but like king of what? You know? What area?
Like, for some reason I thought it was like a Greek king or something, but that's not right.
I was thinking he was a Jewish king, but he's still kind of under, in this case, under Roman control. So by default, he's under the authority of the Caesar, but by default, he's going to be under Pilate because Pilate's the regional governor for the Caesar time frame.
Ah, okay.
Gift card to whoever can answer this question the first in the comments.
That's a good
But
idea.
if you look at Herod, Herod's not actually part of the Pharisees either. He's not. I think he's not religious.
Right.
Yeah. Got my sheets mixed up here.
Getting back to John's arrest, though, I also think it goes to show how dangerous things are at that time, where for saying the wrong thing in the wrong place at the wrong time and making the wrong enemies, you're snatched up in the middle of the night and
Yeah.
taken away. That's a pretty desperate situation.
I mean, it's kind of illegal too. Like, obviously, the people in power feel threatened because, I mean, they went around their little council that they were having earlier. I mean, they didn't like what Nicodemus was doing. He wanted to have an actual investigation. I mean, they cut right around him and did it in secret.
At the risk of being very general, I'm just gonna say general. This is very coincidental. Think about that story, what you're talking about. Think about just our current times. It's coincidental. Same story, different day. It's crazy, huh?
Say more.
Nope.
There's
The Romans
someone
ain't
you
walking
know
around
that's-
arresting people.
Yeah, I was like, do you know someone who's been snatched away?
Just
I'm gonna lock my doors now.
just curious. It's just a curious thing.
I'm nervous. All right, so
Uh-oh.
let's jump up to Simon's monologue. He's pretty mad at God. He's going on this rant about all the things that happened to the Israelites. I feel like this is a pretty relevant conversation. I mean, like, there's people who have faith that go through phases that they get mad at God because they're like, why am I suffering? So this seemed like one of those, and he kind of does what the Israelites did after they got out of slavery, because they got out of slavery and then they started complaining, and they actually wanted to go back into slavery in Egypt because, you know, they didn't like the situation when they had freedom. Well, he's almost saying the same things that they said back in Exodus or whatever book. I think it was Exodus when they were actually complaining. But it is relatable. I mean, I don't know who hasn't gone through that.
So I may be the only one on this point, but when I was watching that, it reminded me of Forrest Gump when Lieutenant Dan is on the fishing boat with Forrest, and he's like cursing up on the crow's nest. And by the end of the scene, he's swimming, doing the backstroke in the ocean. That was a similar vibe I got from this. I think you're spot on though in terms of the relationship to the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and after so many days of eating manna, they're like, "Oh, this is terrible. We have no variety," and it's like you have everything you need. You just can't recognize it. But, I thought the Forrest Gump thing it made me laugh. So,
But you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dan.
I
Shut
sort
up, Gump.
of,
Do anything stupid like get yourself killed.
yeah. Well, I sort of sympathized with him a little bit because, like, he got cold feet and decided he didn't want to turn over his friends, and he corrected that. He went back and talked to his wife and admitted what he did, but he's still stuck in this situation. So I kind of sympathized with him a little bit.
You know what? And if after all that, his friends actually still came out and helped him.
Yeah. I liked that.
I mean, maybe that's the reward, right? Because he didn't sell them out, because he was honest, right? He was just a good human being, and he was rewarded for it by his friends sticking with him at the end instead of letting his boat sink. Oh, spoiler alert.
Well, you got
Maybe that's the message there. He's a good person, just put in a bad circumstance.
Yeah,
we all struggle, right? We all have that moment of doubt, like you were saying. It's like, what the hell? Why? And I did what I was supposed to do. Why am I losing my job? Why am I getting laid off? Why this? Why that? That some of the people I've spoken to would say that's the moment where you're going to learn what it is you need to learn, right? And in this situation, maybe he was put in this tough spot, and he needed to learn that you need to be honest. You need to not hang your friends out to dry. No pun intended, right? Like,
about 10 years ago, when I lived in Avon, I was going through some stuff and I was pretty upset. So I decided to go for a run through the neighborhood, like at night, just to blow off some steam. And I was running and I was thinking, God, why are you letting this happen to me? Why are you doing this to me? And I stepped in a hole and I twisted my ankle and I fell. And then I'm like, is this your idea of a joke? So like when I watched that scene, that's what I was remembering about my early 20s.
Why is it we only get, it's kind of, why is there only a lesson when bad stuff happens? It's like, hey, look, I made it. There's no lesson in the good stuff.
Yeah, well, that's part of, that's an issue with me. It really is, because I think I'm better at acknowledging bad things than I am at good things. I guess that's just like a human conundrum, I guess. So yeah, I think you're right. That's kind of a flaw of some people, and I am one of them.
but we learn through struggle, right? If you're a grade A baseball player with God-given talent, you walk on the field and you can just hit home runs like it's your job, right? That person as compared to the guy who stays late after practice or comes in on Saturdays and Sundays and hits 60, 70 balls in practice, right? Which person's going to appreciate it more? The one who had to work for it. And, there's a lesson to be learned there, but that's reality. When you struggle or fight to get something, you inherently appreciate it more than if someone just serves it to you on a silver platter.
Appreciating something and getting a lesson out of it's two different things. You get laid off. If you get laid off, then there's a lesson, but if you get promoted to president of the company, where's the lesson in that? I did good.
Yeah, getting laid off is probably a great example. What's the lesson we learned there? Work harder. Kiss more rear end.
Don't you think we kind of, maybe it's just me, I always think we just put too much weight on religion. If something bad happens, like you twisted the ankle there, Nathan, you just weren't paying attention, you fell in a hole. It's just a coincidence. Or you end up getting that job you want. That might just be a coincidence. There have to be some kind of a higher power or lesson. It's just how things work. It's almost like throwing the dice down, and you can work hard and try to improve your chances, but sometimes things just happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm going to preface my next statement by absolutely knocking on wood, but you can ask John. John gives me grief all the time about, things just happen. I don't get screwed over very often. Again, knock on wood. But I didn't grow up going to church. I don't read the Bible every night, right? But I do work my tail off. I like to think I'm marginally, potentially on good days, a good human being. But because of those things, I appreciate it and I learn lessons,
I don't disagree with you, Nick. I still think you're one of the luckiest people I've ever met. Just because the incidents I can think of have nothing to do with you working hard or being a good guy, and it has everything to do with being at the right place at the right time. And I don't think that that's a higher power looking after you or anything like that. I think it's, like Jason said, some things in life are kind of like a roll of the dice where, you're just dealt what you're dealt and you got to roll with it sometimes. And at the same time, I also fairly confident in saying that I think we've all had those frustrating experiences where it's just like, okay, this one thing happens and then another thing happens and this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. Next thing you know, you just feel weighed down. And, Nathan, back to your point where it's like, okay, I got to direct this in some healthy manner, and it, you're lashing out in the wrong direction. So I just think that's a common thing, and something that there is a lesson in it in terms of, one, we're all going to experience it and we're all going to deal with it. And two, that it needs to be appropriated in the right direction. And that comes from maturity and having those experiences. And those are also the types of experiences that drive success in a lot of ways, in personal relationships and professional relationships. Doesn't mean I couldn't wake up tomorrow and lose my job. But at the same time, I'm probably more likely to be successful exhibiting those attributes. So,
yeah, I think we've tapped into what is a pretty deep theological debate, because some of it depends on, like, okay, so from a non-religious perspective, this is kind of the debate between fate and chaos. From a religious perspective, it is how involved is God and how much does he step back and just let the world turn. So, there's a spectrum, and I don't know that anybody really knows exactly where, because some people from a religious perspective say God predetermines everything, and you can't even make your own decisions, and you can't even, like, even down to a salvation perspective, they'll say, like, you can't do anything to save yourself. You're either predestined or not. Nick, you and I studied that in high school English in Glidden's class when he was talking about predestinations. Just my personal opinion is that somewhere in the middle, like, a lot of people would disagree with me, but I'm not sure that God necessarily says you have to have this job, maybe in some cases, or like there's one person for you to marry. Like, I tend to think that we have quite a bit of freedom in those choices and things like that. But there is, to be fair, there is a big debate and a large spectrum as to how involved people believe God is. I tend to think, as coming from somebody who's in the Christian perspective, I tend to think that God is a little more concerned about our long-term future than what happens in this life, which is unfortunate for the short term, because that means we might have to go through some stuff that's not fun. But like when I stepped in the hole, like I don't really think God made me step in the hole, you know. I think it was probably coincidence. Um, but maybe we can jump into Jesus intervening in this story. We're at the point where the guys are on the boat, they can't catch anything, and then they think that they see Roman soldiers on the beach. But as it turns out, Jesus is standing there teaching, and he's telling parables. So I noticed the parable that he's talking about sorting fish, and some will go into, you know, this barrel and some will be thrown out. So it will be at the end of the age. And I think this is basically a retelling of a parable of the weeds. I don't know if you've heard that. That's something we talked about at Brewery Church last week, and it seemed to me to be the same thing. They just changed out the symbolism to be about fish. I thought it was interesting. He says these parables make sense to some, but not others. Be patient, because it actually says in the New Testament that Jesus actually like concealed the meaning of the parables from people. So like those who really wanted to know what they meant, if they keep thinking about it, they could figure it out. But like a lot of the crowds he talked to, it would just float right over their heads. So I thought that was interesting, but I don't think it's coincidence that that's the parable that he says in the scene. What do you think of the scene where he meets Simon?
John, you lead us off.
Okay.
You look like you're ready to talk.
I enjoyed the interaction, to say the least. Because again, Simon, you know, I would equate that to probably similar to how you felt, Nathan, when you stepped in that hole, where it's just like, man, I am so downtrodden right now. Like, I'm so frustrated. I still haven't slept. Like, I'm out here doing everything I can. And now I got this guy coming up to me and wanting to stand on my boat. And it's like, I just want to go home. Like, I just want to go home. Leave me alone. And at least the way it was portrayed, it almost seemed like Jesus was kind of playing around with him a little bit too, kind of poking him and getting his attention a little bit. So I thought it was a fun interaction as it was portrayed.
To make matters worse, you got his brother in the background looking at Jesus like a boy, like a little girl seeing a boy band, right?
It's the Beatles. It's Justin Bieber.
Yeah, kids in the block.
Yeah, guys like going nuts back there, and Simon's up. You're like, dude, just don't stand on my boat. Get off my boat, man. Like, I need to stand up. Okay, find a rock, dude. Like, don't stand on my boat. Like, and then he's just like, whatever, fine, just do it. And then when at the very end of his conversation, when he tells his people he's teaching to, what's he say? He's like, I've got to spend more time with my new friends here, or whatever it is he says. Yeah,
Something like that.
I'd be like, all right, guy. So not only are you standing on my boat to talk to your peeps, but now you're gonna we're gonna have some me and you time. Oh, I can't wait for this. Yeah, I just massively frustrating.
I think it kind of goes to, I mean, Simon's obviously at the bottom of the bottom. I mean, he's pretty much got himself, he's fixing to turn himself in for execution. He's like, hopefully I get to see my wife before or maybe if I let him beat me enough or whatever he said, then he can let me have visitors. I mean, he's kind of just more or less, I mean, this is what, accepted his fate, I guess, lack of a better word is. So here comes this Jesus guy, and he's like, okay, what the heck, why not? I'm going to have nothing else to lose, I'm just going to, get killed anyway. But I noticed there, like the whole time, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, I mean, about the miracle thing. He doesn't believe the Messiah doesn't believe any of this stuff. All of a sudden, throws the fish there, 2 feet off the shore, and he's got a bunch of, his net and a bunch of fish there, and all of a sudden now he's a believer, and you see at the end, he's like, oh, the Messiah, now he's all, it looks almost like things are going to be all right because the other guy's going to take the fish in and mark it and pay off Simon's debt, is what he says. I mean, I don't know. Not sure how I feel about this team. I mean, honest with you, I mean,
it's good.
I mean, has to be a miracle or something amazing has to happen before people. I mean, the whole idea of religion is faith. And so, oh look, something happened, so now I believe. Would Simon have believed if nothing happened? I mean,
It'd take a lot more to get me to fall and kiss at your feet, right?
Well, and if you think about it too, at that point in time, how long had they been told that a Messiah was coming? And how, like Nathan said earlier, how many other messiahs, self-proclaimed messiahs, had come through to where, okay, show me something that makes me believe. Show me something that validates what you're presenting here. Because for you to walk up to me off the street and just say, "Hey, I'm the Messiah," I'm going to look at you and go, "Yeah, I'm sure you are. Get off my boat. Like, I'm going home. I'm tired."
Grab it, concealed to carry.
Good story though, too. You have to have a good story to tell.
Right.
I can understand, Jason. I kind of understand what you're saying because people sometimes see something that's a coincidence and equate that as God intervening. Is that kind of what you're going with?
Except for this would not be a coincidence. I mean, on the shore, I mean, that amount of fish. I mean, they're all like, "Well, that's a miracle." I mean, they didn't say a miracle. And if you look at when Matthew comes up, he's like, "That's impossible." And so now you almost get Matthew kind of like, how does this happen? I mean, that amount. I mean, he's got so many fish to flip over. I mean,
he's sitting there calculating the mathematics of it.
He's like, "Well, that's a lot of." Matthew's like, "Well, that's a lot of money there. You guys got a lot of money."
But I think that goes to validate the situation, though. Again, you have all these different personalities that were brought in at the exact same time, witnessing the exact same thing, with these different perspectives and different backgrounds that culminate to provide that perspective and that validation on what actually happened, that it wasn't just a coincidence, that it was, an actual miracle.
Did you guys notice they actually picked up to 2 more apostles at the time frame?
Yeah, what's with that?
Picked up James and John also now. He goes, "Come on, James and John."
All right, Simon, you're coming with me. Your name's gonna be Peter. Oh, by the way, you two in the back. You guys, come
James
on.
and John, come on.
And they're like, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, all right, cool. Yeah."
Oh crap, we're the cool kids now.
It's like, who the hell are you? I kind of have issues with the writing on that one. Like, that's a little. Were you struggling to try and get all the apostles in the show? And you're like, all right, this is the only way we can do it. We're just gonna have them grab people out of the crowd at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure in the gospel there's a much better way that those two were brought in. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, in the background of Simon becoming Peter, there were these 2 dudes, and God was like, "Hey, come on here, you'll do."
That's smart networking.
Yeah.
Let's just grab these other 2 fishermen and have them come with us too. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about the whole, Christians using that fish symbol. I mean, Jesus is talking, you're still gonna be fishing, but you're gonna be fishing for people now. And so it's kind of like,
Fisher of men.
Yeah, fisher of men. That's what he said.
Ha 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 ha.
I was thinking about, okay, so him doubting, and he needed this sign, he needed evidence to believe. I guess it didn't bother me too much because I think that, I think of faith as trust, and I don't think that, I think doubt's totally normal. And I think even if you have faith, you'll go through, if you really admit it, you'll go through periods of doubt. And I think that's just kind of how we're designed. So I kind of look at it like he needed a major demonstration of evidence that was unmistakable, so big it couldn't be a coincidence. And then he has faith. Like, are you saying that it seems like less because he needed proof?
I think when I look at it in this context, I think you say faith. I almost look at it as, why don't you just say believe? Oh, now I believe. And so,
Same
I
thing.
mean, more or less, that's what you're saying is I have faith because I believe. Whether I have faith in myself, I believe in myself. I mean, it's kind of the same. But sometimes you have these, when you talk about religion, sometimes you believe not necessarily because there's an action to force you to believe. It's just you just have a feeling or you feel so strongly about it. In this case here, I think sometimes when you look at some of these early scriptures, I mean, they expect modern day Christians just to take this stuff by what it says and just, you know, I don't see how sometimes these people doubt things. I mean, if you look at the stories, I mean, these things are happening, these miracles right there. I'm thinking, if I was there, okay, dude, I believe you. I'm sold. I mean, you got me. And so I'm thinking it takes this to actually convince people to kind of follow him. I mean, Paul did with Simon. Simon was not on board with that until all of a sudden you got, you know, a million fish wherever he had the net. And so, I mean,
Okay.
it takes this extreme event to happen, this extreme miracle or something to have happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting, Nathan. You said it's trust, right? Well,
Mhm.
okay. Let's say you trust me. Okay, if I showed you a video of a UFO, you trust me, but do you believe it? Do you have faith that it's real?
I think
Person
we're talking
ready
about.
to confirm
Don't
it.
answer that. Don't
Yeah,
answer that.
I mean, Nick, I think it's slightly different if you're showing me a video of something versus if you pull up to my house at one. Uh, that's more of kind of how I took this in terms of
Challenge
a
accepted.
miracle. But show up, man. You're welcome over. I'll open up another bottle of 101 and we'll have a good time. So.
All right, I'm gonna fly over in my DeLorean, my flux capacitor.
And then you
Yeah.
guys really will see UFOs.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, tell me about this. So when Simon finally does believe, and he's on his knees and he says, "Get away from me! I'm a sinful man." That hit me pretty hard. Like, this was emotional to watch. I think because I don't feel necessarily. I mean, I try to be a good person, but I don't particularly feel like a good man necessarily. And other people tell me I should feel like I am, but I don't know, man. I know my flaws. I know my issues. So I think I was feeling that when I saw him, like, say, like, get away from me. Like, I'm not worth your time. That was a big gut punch for me to watch. Did anybody else get hit like that by this moment? Or, I mean,
Just
I'm like
means you
that in
have
Batman
humility.
movies
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that
kind of
you
goes. Go ahead.
Good. No, you got it.
I think that kind of goes with kind of the Christian message. I mean, at least probably not now. I mean, what is it? Hate the sin, not the sinner. I mean, if you look at a lot of the people that Jesus picks with the apostles, I mean, he's not getting choir boys. I mean, they all have issues. I mean, from Mary Magdalene all the way to Simon to, I mean, we've kind of set that up. I mean, to Matthew, who does kind of shady stuff. I mean, he's real strict and he's, you know, more or less betraying his people. So the message there is, I think, which is kind of the root of Christianity, right? I mean, all is forgiven. I mean, Jesus forgives. You kind of even look at that the last series with the children when Jesus tells them that, you know, it's up to God to forgive. I mean, he takes care of these things. So, I mean, it's kind of that's kind of a message, at least with Christianity at one time. I mean, you're switching from you did something bad, the reason why you're poor, the reason why you're having a hard time is because you made God mad, to hang on a second, you're just having hard times. Everybody's a sinner. It's okay.
That's good. So it's like a counterpoint to some of those other kind of theologies that are a little bit off from earlier in the series that it was presenting. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like the religious leaders. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say was, Snyder, it's you feeling that way just means you're full. You have humility and you're a humble individual. You know, I mean, that is what that tells me, which goes hand in hand with sometimes, or with some of the teachings of the church, right? Be humble, you know, have humility, and you know, there is something to be said. Even me with my cynical is not the right term, questioning kind of ways. If you know, I can't think of a good example, but let's use the example in the story. You know, if a million fish were caught and I needed a million to live and I saw it, I'd be like, all right, all right, cool.
Mhm.
This is it. You're the real deal, man. I get it. All right. And then so you'd be like, yeah, there's a lot of people in this world that probably could use some help. Like, should you really be helping me? Like, of all people? I mean, obviously the counter is the alternative is he's gonna die. So there's something to be said about why God's helping him, right? It's not like the alternative is he's gonna be homeless. I mean, the alternative is he's going to die. So there's something to be said about why God is helping him. But I don't know. I would be a little humble too. Be like, hey, appreciate it, man. I don't know if I'm the best choice for your hand of divine intervention here, but
This is interesting to me because I'm pretty sure I'm harder on myself than like my faith says that I should be. Like that from what I view of accurate teaching of Jesus, I think he's far less hard on me than I am on myself. So it's funny that I can't let go of that and be easier on myself. But that's probably part of the reason I resonated so much with the scene. But I still can't let go of it and go easier on myself. I don't know why. You would think I would be able to, given what I believe, but that can be hard for me at times. So
it's your goals and your aspirations, man. You know where you're trying to do and trying to get to, and you're holding yourself to that standard. Is the standard you're holding yourself to healthy? I don't know. I mean,
that is
that's
the question.
that's for you and your therapist or your girlfriend or your mom or whoever to talk about. But I mean, there's something to be said for holding yourself to a standard. I like you. I am also equally hard on myself. I don't have the faith to fall back on to say, God kind of he believes I should be this, and he's this hard on me, and I'm more hard on myself. I don't have that frame of reference quite yet, but I think it's safe to say you're probably not alone. I think a lot of people, especially people that do well in this world, are a lot harder on themselves than others.
Yeah.
To be fair, like I said, it can go too far though. It can be unhealthy.
Yeah.
So.
I think you're right.
The striving for perfection, again, you'll never meet it, but having that drive and that determination, like Nick said, I do agree that most of the at least successful people in the business world, that's a common characteristic. And yeah, you kind of have to be a little bit crazy to push yourself, and some of it may be unhealthy, but to constantly want to improve in whatever aspect that you're focused on, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that's fairly common human nature.
It's all about balance. What do you guys think about all right, so the final thing here is Jesus is walking off with the disciples and he says, fish are nothing. You have much bigger things ahead of you. From now on, I will make you fishers of men. You are to gather as many as possible, all kinds of people. I will sort them out later. So that's my favorite part, was those last two lines of that. Gather all kinds of people. I will sort them out later. Now, that really stuck out to me because I think that's spot on. Like, I don't know that that's necessarily the way I see religion carried out in a lot of areas. I know some people who are really good at this, but others not so much. Like, we've been talking about the whole judgmental component of religion because that came up with the Pharisees and things like that. But it seems like Jesus is making the counterpoint to that. Like, it's not necessarily our job to judge or figure out like who's on good terms with God, who's not, who's saved, who's not. It's just gather people, he'll sort them out. Do you resonate with that idea? And is that what you see being carried out around you or not?
Like today, like today's president.
Like this is a pretty inclusive idea, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, they, this exact, these two sentences, I mean, are why, the West was settled in America, right? Partially. People were heading west and trying to convert, amongst some other things. But so trying to think of some other items. The people looking for Central America trying to convert as well. They're trying to find others and bring them to the church. And God will sort them out later. So, but to your message or your question about today, I feel like I've encountered some people that are like that. I love when I encounter the Mormons on campus when I was at Purdue. They love to try and show me their way. But, all joking aside, I feel like that element still exists today. I don't necessarily know the be sorted out later part, but
I kind of disagree with Nick on that. I mean, just kind of look at, about the Mormon thing. Most Christians don't believe that Mormons are Christians. So, they've already kind of divided them. You look at, going to the West in America, they call that manifest destiny. It's our right to go over there and kill the Indians. They're subhuman people. And so, it's, and I think if you even look at modern day Christianity today, we do a lot of judgment. We can't fuck with him. That woman down there is having an affair on her husband. She's bad. Stay away from her. We can't. So we're actually not doing what the teaching is saying. We're almost doing the exact same thing that Jesus is trying to get away from. We've kind of went full circle. You kind of look. Even we base people based on if they're good people or not. I don't know if it's human nature, which I think probably is more human nature than anything. Still do it. I still see it happen today.
How do you feel about we're going to Costa Rica to build a church? We're going to Costa Rica to build a water well, but you got to come to our church.
I read an article on that. I don't. That's feels self-serving, don't you think? Look what. Then you come back and look what I did. I went to Costa Rica. I did this. I helped these people and all that. And you can't just go down there and build that well and say I did this for humanity because I'm a good. That to me. That is another thing I hate is when you see people putting all these pictures on Facebook of I went to Haiti and did all this crap and did all that, and that's still self-serving. You can't just go down there and help people without some kind of a look. I got 200 likes on Facebook for going down here. Oh, you're such a good person, and it's kind of I really have issues with here. What was it? A Pentecostal friend of mine went to Africa. And they talked about all these Bibles they passed out, and they had 4,000 people come to church. Well, they were in a poor area, and people were half starving. They fed them 3 meals a day for a week. Hell, I'm going to go there if I'm starving. Are you really converting people, or are they just saying what you want to hear just because there's a meal or something attached? That's again, it kind of goes back to that real kind of self-serving. But then if you look at that, there's people here that are poor that Christians didn't help it. I'm sure any of us can go down the street where we live at, and there's somebody needs some help, and the church ain't doing anything to help them out. So don't get me on a rant now.
I get it.
That's my fundamental feeling. Sorry, Purdy.
I agree and I disagree with both of you. And again, I think that I have issue with it when it is something that's self-serving. I don't have an issue with it if you're going out and handing out meals and then passing out a Bible with the meal. And I kind of take it as more in terms of what this particular section of the show was trying to convey is cast a wide net. You're putting a message out. If they're doing it just for the meal, fine. Again, that's not necessarily why you're there in terms of, solely serving a meal. But at the same time, you're still doing good in a community. My issue is, like you said, Jason, I don't like it when I see people that are taking, sunset heart-shaped hands pics out in Haiti and posting it to Facebook on a mission trip and talking about all
None of us did it right.
all the good that they're doing. It's like, but again, if you're doing community service, you're helping people out, and at the same time, you're also conveying a message, and that's your entry point into having a conversation with somebody. I don't have an issue with it. If you want to go build a well or build a school, help impoverished nations out, like, more power to you, but don't make it self-serving. Don't self-grandize it. Help people, stay humble. And if that's your entry into a message, cool.
I kind of agree with you on that. I mean, I don't have a problem with providing the meal then passing out the Bible, but I don't like the idea is the meal, but you have to do the Bible. And here's the meal, and here's the option
Right.
of taking this. I think that's
The old
sometimes
bait
you
and
don't see that.
switch.
So you want, like, and I agree with you. We should care about other people and serve with no strings attached. That
Right,
would be
but
the ideal.
again, if it's your entry point into having a conversation and spreading the gospel, and that's more of how I've taken it. And again, I think the intent of that message.
I was gonna say I really resonate with the idea here. Gather all kinds of people. I will sort them out later as a non-judgmental, like I'm applying it to, we're trying to start this brewery church where we want anybody from any background or no background at all to be able to come and learn and discuss and have a valuable point of view. And if they never change, if they retain the same beliefs they had when they came in, we want them to be able to be okay and accepted regardless. But I watch it play out like this. I watch maybe a Protestant or evangelical come in and then start talking about how Catholicism is, bad or wrong or something. But there's 3 other Catholics in the room and they don't know that. And then I'll watch like a Baptist come in and then they're talking bad about the other denominations and they're in the room. And I'm like, man, if I can't get these denominations to come in and not judge each other, how am I going to get atheists and agnostics in here to be comfortable? Because that's what I want. I'm a former skeptic and I want skeptics in the room because I love talking to them and I love, exploring together. But I watch people struggle to not try to sort the people out themselves, right? Who's right, who's wrong. I think it's a fantastic ideal. I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate all of those challenges and get to a place where we could do what Jesus was saying here. I mean, Jason, you've been to the group. Do you kind of see that challenge too?
Yeah, dude. I think you have a lot of people coming in. One thing that gets me is people say you gotta have a relationship with Jesus, instead of religion. Instead of trying to put it on religion, but a lot of times those people are just as judgmental as anybody else. And so I think if you're a non-believer, I agree with you, Nathan, coming from the outside coming in, you're like, you can't get the Protestants and the Catholics to agree with each other. I mean, you look at your history books, they've been fighting each other in Europe. I mean, they still fight each other. I mean, if you can't get them to agree, how the hell are you going to get me? Excuse my language. How are you going to convince me to come in? And I think there's just a lot of, it even bleeds into politics now. It's just a lot of like prerequisites. You have to be, if you do this, if you don't do this, this, and this, you're not a Christian. I think that's not beneficial. And I don't know how it is here, but when I was in Missouri, you always have these, what they call them, OBIs, or they have to go out and preach. So they go like to the clubs and stuff on a Friday night. They'll sit there and just, call the girls names because they're in some skimpy dress. Or I'm like, dude, what? This is not productive. What's the purpose of this? I mean, you're actually scaring more people off than you are pulling them in. And so I think, I just find this one interesting. I mean, you look at the early Christians, you look at the reading, thou shalt not judge. I mean, everybody's a sinner. You're going to open your arms to people. I just don't see. It's almost like the modern day Christians have turned into the Pharisees. The ones that were the ones that are persecuted are now the persecutors. When you kind of,
I think the magical word's tolerance, man. Yeah. I mean, whether we're talking about politics, religion, or really anything, it's going into something and knowing that you don't know. If you're an atheist and you go into your brewery church, don't go in there and just start throwing around and telling everyone why they're wrong. Go in there and listen. You are 100% allowed to have your beliefs. You don't have any responsibility to change them. But I feel you do have a responsibility to listen. Maybe John's a diehard Catholic. Maybe Jason's a Protestant, and maybe Nathan's a Mormon here. You guys all feel that way because of however you feel. Who am I to come in and say you're all wrong? And that is where I can see the story is bring in all kinds. Even by me telling you about my, I'm not an atheist, but if I were an atheist telling you about my atheism, you may learn something from me and I may learn something from you. And so in the essence of trying to spread the gospel, you may get smarter, you may learn more. Now, the counter to that is you look at the Crusades in the Middle Ages where they were hell-bent on, they were, their minds were set on going to the Holy Land and taking it back and all that. And that's not how you spread the good news, right? So bringing it back to today, tolerance, and just like what Jesus said, go find all types. I'll figure them out later. Well, we can discuss the meaning of the second sentence later on, but let's stick to the first sentence for right now.
You notice on this series, which I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You notice this series, Jesus is using a lot more sugar than he is spice. They say you get more sugar than spice. He's open arms. I don't know anybody who's been converted to some church because you're going to force them. When these people are down and out and you go help them out, we're not going to talk about religion right now, but you need a blanket, you need some place to stay, you need some food. Right. You're probably going to get more people that way than you are trying to convince them that you're right.
Well, Nick, I've probably kept you a little bit long, so I want to wrap up real quick.
John had something to say.
John, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to make a joke that I was going to let 6 out of Nick's 7 wives know that he was so on point. So
this is only break he gets.
That's not the pot calling the kettle black, John. Oh boy.
So do you guys recommend this episode?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know. What'd you guys think it was? I'm not sure if it was one of my favorite ones, but it was all right.
It was okay. Yeah. I still enjoyed the previous one better. Jason, I know you didn't like that one.
I didn't like the previous one. I'm not with kids in a field.
Yeah.
Kids in a field with a creepy dude, man. That ain't me.
Actually, I didn't mind the kid one.
I know. You like the kids.
No. I mean, there was some appeal to it, but I don't know.
I think I recommend this one. I think I liked this one in episode 2 the best so far. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen from here, because I know Simon is referred to as a zealot. The zealots were real anti-Rome and almost like maybe an anarchist or something. So I'm wanting to see what's going to happen next between him and Jesus, because I know they're going to have a clash of ideas.
Can't wait.
Yep.
That will be interesting because Jesus ain't really that brutal on the Romans. Things like giving the Caesar what Caesar's and things like that. I think he just plays in the environment.
Yeah, I'm expecting Simon to go through a crisis of expectations, but we'll see.
Do you guys believe with they put the message that Jesus is not real antagonistic? Do you guys agree with that?
I think I do, except for maybe he did kind of go after the legalistic Pharisees. Of course,
Yeah.
they brought it on themselves, and they were trying to murder him. So, but yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, I only see him getting mad at one group of people, and it is religious people who were distorting the teaching and making it about power themselves and things like that.
Not just distorting it, but also exploiting it.
Yeah, and like enslaving people.
Well, in terms of how they're presenting tithing and everything else, you know, it was
Same
more of an
stuff.
exploitation. Yeah.
Yeah, same stuff we see today.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys for discussing this with me. If you guys want to contact us, send us questions or anything, contact us on the Church in a Brewery Facebook page, Brewery Ministries on Instagram or YouTube, or breweryministries.org. So we will catch up with you in 2 weeks on episode 5. See you guys.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.